Hey, welcome to MhM Media Reacts. This week we're going to be talking about the third week of DC Rebirth books. I'm Chris McDonald. I'm joined by Kevin Allen.
Hey.
And Greg Smith.
Hey.
So we're going to jump straight in, opening with Superman 1. So we've seen in Rebirth we've now got old Superman back, but he's bringing along back old Lois, and they're now starting up a family. And this is the first we've had an opportunity in Rebirth to really see that get fleshed out and see the relationship, what it means to Superman's son to be the son of Superman, and how he deals with having these kind of powers at such a young age. For me, it was quite a standout book. I think it's definitely one of the stronger that DC are putting out right now. I think Thomas is shown in the past that he's quite good at writing child superheroes and how it affects them. So it was a good move to put him on this book. We've seen him do the same in the past, and for me, it was quite a standout. I really loved the opening and the optimism, and being the son of Superman, what that means to have him as your father meant, and how that sort of changed over the issue when we saw how the son deals with that. What was your takeaways, Kev?
Yeah, I loved this book. I agree it's one of the best. I thought the family dynamic was great once again. One thing that was interesting with the book was seeing the difficulty that John is having with his powers and having to attempt to understand and decipher what it means to do the greater good. Another thing that I would mention about the book is I thought that it was kind of an eerie book at times. Like, it was sort of had this disturbing sort of like undercurrent to it. Even though it's this family life, there's this darkness to it where, like, there's a moment in the book where John snaps and accidentally kills his pet cat, and I thought that was like pretty dark stuff. And even some of the depictions, like the way the Trinity were depicted when John sort of sees them through the window and stuff, I thought that was really cool, actually. I thought the art really captured the eeriness of what's going on internally for John.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was especially interesting to see, you know, John's been really well behaved. Like, we've got this idea that he's clearly not someone who pushes boundaries with his parents and regularly steps out with what they've set out for him. But we saw him put in a situation where he's only allowed to use his powers at certain times, but he's found himself in a situation where he's got to, and then he can't control them. And this completely changed, almost in that moment, what it meant to him to be Superman's son and what these powers meant to him. So that's going to be very interesting moving forward. And I definitely agree at the end when you get to see the Trinity. I mean, to me, I took that as, this is how, you know, superheroes like this can look to a child. Like, you know, we do have these depictions that, you know, Superman can smash your hope and stuff, but at the same time, you know, you see the Trinity together in the dead of the night outside your home, and yeah, I mean, I imagine that would be really imposing.
Yeah.
So I did love how much it captured, I guess, his worldview in the tone and the art and everything as well. And I am very interested to see how that relationship goes and what path he finds himself on from there. So moving on to another one of the issue ones, we've got Green Lanterns. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on that, Greg?
I really enjoyed the Green Lantern's Rebirth, and that was a solid introduction to those two characters working together as a duo. And this just really continued that story. Just, they're out on a mission. They're both not getting on. Jessica and Simon, they both don't really like each other that much, but they're having to put up with each other because they've been put together by Hal and to protect that sector. So obviously there's going to be conflict and it's going to be rough for the first few issues, first few arcs maybe. But I did go straight into the introduction of the role that the Red Lanterns are going to play in this book, and I'm not really sure where I stand on this whole, like, the anger's kind of, it's turning the normal citizens of these towns that they visit into almost zombie-like creatures. They have no control over what they're doing. They completely erupt at the Lanterns due to this rage, and they're just monsters almost. That's the characteristics that they portray. Obviously, they have no control over that. It seems to be some sort of mind control because they're not mutated as such. It's just they have the signature red eyes, and again the trademark that the anger is coming out. But it was a fun book. It was a good book, and you're starting to see what the writers are trying to do with these particular characters and what they're trying to achieve in this story. But overall, if the arc continues this way, then it's going to be kind of forgettable. It's not going to be anything that's going to establish these two characters together and be a Green Lantern book that someone's going to recommend to you a few years down the line. It just seems like it's one of these flash in the pan stories that might only have one exciting issue in a 4 or 5 issue arc. And again, nothing's really stood out so far. It's just a combination of things. To me, right now, I don't get the feeling that the writer truly knows where he wants to go with this book yet. So I think that's something that will maybe, I imagine, will develop further along, and hopefully we have a clear outlook on the direction of this book. But I'll hang in there for now. But there's certainly been worse books, but it was enjoyable to an extent. But just I didn't think it followed the strong introduction issue. But we're not going to be short for Green Lantern books, so this one does bomb, then we've got Hal Jordan and a bunch of others to look forward to.
Yeah, I definitely largely agree. It was all right, but nothing stand out, and I think being very interesting is something that Sam Humphrey struggles with in his writing, as I've seen him on in books in the past.
It's just basic storytelling. There's nothing, there's no oomph to it, It was just. Yeah.
So
I can't say we're going to get that from. Is it Vendetti who writes Green Lantern, who's doing the Hal book? Because he kind of lacked that himself when he was doing that long run. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to the other Green book of DC's line, we've got Green Arrow. Personally, for me, I loved it. I was cautious, when we were getting a return to an older Green Arrow, but with what we've been left with from the New 52. I thought the Rebirth issue got off good, but this issue did take some of what the Rebirth issue was trying to say, and I felt it said a lot of it a lot better. We got a more fleshed out look at the lifestyle Ollie leads and how that is, and how he's being shown that doesn't quite line up with what he hopes it is, and how he doesn't have a lot of substance in his life. We got to see Green Arrow and Black Canary in bed together, waking up, hey pretty bird, just like old times. Was on some levels everything I'd ever always wanted from DC again, and we've seen that it really built up how little a support structure Ollie really has in his life before the issue kind of tears it all away from him, which is going to be interesting moving forward. So what were your thoughts, Kev?
I still really liked it. I think the ideas are really great. I think. Yeah. But I can't help but feel like there's this problem when it comes to actually putting them into words at times in the book, where the dialogue is still really heavy-handed and really cringy at times. There's a part where I think it's Black Canary says, "Try to objectify me and you'll bleed because I'm a weapon." And it was just like... Yeah. It's really hard not to sort of wear down your teeth reading that.
That's something you'd expect from Katie Cassidy in Arrow or something, not in the actual book itself.
It's so corny, and it has no place in a book that's dealing with what that book's dealing with. So I think that's a shame. I also think that the book still, at times, I feel like there is this clear agenda at play that I still felt in this issue as well. It doesn't always feel genuine in how it's presented, but there are a lot of positives too. I think that Ollie and Dinah's relationship is awesome. I think that Ollie is extremely charismatic and likable. I've no idea where the central mystery is going, but it seems interesting so far, and it does remind me somewhat of Morrison's The Black Glove, and more recently in Batman with the Court of Owls. It does seem inspired by those, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here on out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the dialogue being quite an issue, especially in the fight scenes as well, where it's kind of on steroids a bit.
I think George Perez will have something to say about that.
So moving on to what was the only actual Rebirth book we had this week, we had Titans, where we got to see more fleshing out of what Wally's journey is going to be, and we got to see a returning of the actual Titans team to who they were and what they used to mean to each other before we had the big reset. We had Wally restore a lot of their memories and how they felt about each other, opening the issue with restoring Wally and Dix being best friends and expanding out to the rest of the team. I thought it was a great issue. It was really nice to get back what was lost there, and it is this pocket of the DC universe. It's now more than any of the rest of Rebirth, more like what we had before the New 52 kicked in. And it is nice to have the value of those relationships back and what the Teen Titans mean as a whole. And it was definitely a nice sort of walk down memory lane of who that team were, and really reminded old readers and established them again for new readers. How did you feel? What were your takeaways, Greg?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on board with you. I thought it was a very heartwarming issue. And it was a trip down memory lane. It was just stacked with nostalgia. That's all that issue was, and that's not a bad thing considering. I just honestly thought it was a really nice issue. It was a really nice callback to the times we had with those characters years ago, and it was great that they went together just like they did back then. It was just like reading an old comic. And it was just good having a gang back together, you know. It was just, I'm really quite excited about the direction of this comic because it just seems like it's going to be a whole lot of fun, and they've showed that already in 2 issues of just how much fun this comic can actually be. You know, and not obviously I know there's just been 1 issue of Teen Titans, but I was mostly referring to you know, the issue of Rebirth itself, because that really was a Wally book, and this kind of continues on with that, but now it obviously introduces you past Barry and onto his closest friends in his, you know, friendship circle that he has. So seeing him establish those relationships again with Dick and Donna and everyone like that, it was just really, really nice, and it was just, I honestly can't say much more than that, to be fair. It was just a really heartwarming comic, really heartfelt, and it did put a smile on your face when you're reading all these and seeing all these characters kind of realize what was missing or who was missing in their lives. It was good.
Yeah, my only real downside for me is I'm not a fan of the Watchmen story that DC are pushing within the scope of Rebirth, and I'm not. I don't like the way that paints the Watchmen or what that necessarily means going forward. And Titans Rebirth definitely set the impression that this is going to be the book that's carrying that forward and dealing with that most, which I'm not too eager to see, but I'll let it play out before I judge it too much. I don't know if you have different thoughts on that, Greg.
No, I mean, I agree. It certainly seemed like that was the direction it was going. But at the same time, as much as that's going to be a focus, they're going to continue to develop these relationships. And, I mean, everything's not just going to be hunky-dory in 1 issue. Obviously, they're going to pan that out and focus on individual relationships. There's going to be a few frosty relationships, and they're not everyone's. It did seem like everyone just kind of jumped in and everyone wanted to hug straight away, but there are going to be, they could possibly look at a bit of fallout between certain characters. I don't think that's going to play a massive role, but it certainly could be a subplot they could do within this Watchmen thing, a trust issue, so to speak, because he's been away so long, what he's missed out. Does he know these characters as well as he did? Do they know him as well as, you know? There's many angles you could look at that for this comic, but I think that's what makes it so exciting. There's a lot of things they can do with this, you know, core of characters, and with that Watchmen story itself. I hope it doesn't devour this book. As long as it plays a role, that's fine. But as long as it doesn't completely take away everything else from this book, then I'll be happy.
Yeah. I am also curious about some of the larger implications, like the things like Cyborg serving such a different role in this world, but
Yeah,
I doubt they'll bring him onto the Titans. So I'm curious how that kind of stuff will play out down the line as well.
that will be like a one-shot issue probably. Once the first main arc is gone, they'll, hey, it's Cyborg, welcome to the family, and then just do that little thing. More hugs and nostalgia to go around, and that will be that. It'll be done. It'll happen.
But yeah, and moving on to the last book of the week, we've got Batman 1, which was a book that really surprised me. I went in not with low expectations, but I just kind of expected it to be more of the same for Batman, as a problem I feel the character does struggle with a lot. And for the early part of the issue, I felt that was what we got, and as the issue progressed, I felt it's still what we got for a lot of the issue, but it was really well handled. And what did impress me and give me a lot of hope looking forward is the end of the issue itself did start to present something that potentially can be quite new. We were seeing Batman respond to a disaster, and we were seeing the citizens of Gotham start to talk about what Gotham is as a city, how it's darker than the rest of the DC universe, and what Batman means to them, and the fact that they don't have an actual superhero, unlike Metropolis. They don't have Superman, they don't have a Flash or a Green Lantern. They've got Batman, even calling back to the Nolan line of the hero they deserve. We've seen Batman fight for this city and how they view him and themselves. And then issue ends with the big impact of now there's superheroes in Gotham trying to stand for Gotham, and we're going to have to see how Batman's going to have to deal with that. Personally, I think that's really interesting direction to go when you're approaching with the point of view of Batman trying to keep his city against actual superheroes. What was your takeaways, Kev?
Yeah, that's definitely the concept that most grabbed me in the book, and I think that summed up why the second half of that book was so good and the potential implications that it'll have. We've seen stand-ins for Batman before, or times when he's not around, but this really could be interesting because there's going to be this idea of what happens to Batman when he's perhaps no longer actually required, in a genuine way this time, where it is actually superpowered beings that are taking his role. So it's going to be interesting to see that going forward. And like you mentioned, I loved the sort of Nolan-esque exploration of how Batman's kind of what Gotham has, and they sort of have to accept that they're not one of those fancy cities like Metropolis that gets a Superman. They ultimately get something that's in fitting with what Gotham is and who they are. And I liked, again, we've seen it before, but you've got the guy on the plane as it's going down that he's showing this real paranoia towards the city, and sort of this idea that Gotham is sort of this hateful entity that's almost out to get the people that are in its proximity. So yeah, I loved it. I think the concepts at work are really cool, and potentially they have something really strong on their hands with this.
Yeah, and especially I was surprised how much I felt a sort of emotional core to the issue. For the things that were quite emotionally strong in the issue were things at this point we've kind of seen be a bit overdone for Batman. So I was surprised how much it managed to pull me into those aspects too, given how often we've seen them. What was your thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this issue as well. I mean, I wasn't too impressed with the first Batman Rebirth special. That was just kind of, yeah, Batman's still doing his thing. Nothing much has changed, apart from the introduction of Duke Thomas into the Bat family, and getting his suit and things. But yeah, the first part of this issue was just typical Batman for me, like slow paced, not a whole lot going on. But the second half was really what did it for me as well. It just launched you into this new Batman adventure, and again, something that's not really been tackled before, with the aspect of Batman having to battle for his city, against not villains but people who could take his job really, and Batman's not really had that problem before. So like Kev mentioned, there's Dick's been Batman, John Paul Valley's been Batman, even Commissioner Gordon was Batman recently, but none of those people had powers. You know, they were just really well trained and, you know, come from kind of similar training backgrounds. None of them are superheroes, so to speak, like Superman or Green Lantern. No one had cosmic powers or anything like that. They could really elevate them to do things that Batman couldn't. But yeah, this story obviously we'll find out, you know, if they do become foes of Batman, or if he learns to, you know, live with them and cooperate with them the best of his abilities. Knowing Bruce, he won't, and he'll just want to you know, just fight his way out of this one like he normally does. But yeah, no, it was really good. More of the same going forward, I think, and more development, finding out more about these characters. Where did they come from? Why they suddenly just shown all of this interest in Gotham? Why not go to another city that didn't have a super powered hero? There are other ones out there. Why choose Gotham? They did mention that they really appreciate Batman's work and everything that he's done for Gotham. And then they just announced that they're taking over essentially, and that this is their city now. So it will be interesting to see Batman's approach to that, and how he discusses it with the Bat family and Alfred, and what his tactical approach will be to this. And again, the overall outcome as well. So really solid issue from Tom King there. So I look at so far from all the Batman books, it looks like it's going to be another solid Batman heavy book. I don't even know where I was going with that, but basically it looks like there's going to be a lot of good Batman books, is what I was saying, in less complicated form there. But yeah, that's what. It's getting to that time, guys. It's getting to that time.
Yeah. So, well, it's getting to that time in the right time. So that's what we thought of DC Rebirth. Let us know what you thought below, and like, comment, and subscribe.